Nearly 2 years ago, I had moved in with my girlfriend to a small but cheap apartment in Montreal. I had been working night shifts while in university, so most evenings she would call me before bed to talk. She mentioned she kept hearing noises in the evenings and thought it might be mice. I had never noticed the sounds, but agreed it was possible because it was an old building. So, I set traps the next morning. However, she complained more and more about the scratching. I would even listen for it when I was home at night, but nothing, no mice, and no sounds. A few weeks later, our friends down the hall asked if we could water their plants while they were away. One night, I received a freaked out phone call from my girlfriend. She was in the neighbor's apartment and began to hear the scratching again. So, she looked through the peephole and saw an old lady scratching at our door with scissors. I ran home while she called the police. It turns out the old lady had picked my girlfriend and started to stalk her. She knew our schedules well enough that she was able to come by only when I was at work, with her scissors, hoping to be let in. I just discovered this subreddit, and I think I have a story ideal for here. I apologize in advance if my English isn't very good, because I'm not a native speaker. When I met her, I was in a tough spot with my girlfriend. We had a lot of fights because I was working with a female artist who was illustrating one of my stories, and she was very jealous about it. She was considering the possibility of making me choose between my career and her, and this damaged my commitment to our relationship. One day, after a fight, I left her place and went to the university campus because I had a seminar to attend. And I ended up talking to a very pretty girl who was waiting too. She had very pale skin, big brown eyes, and short hair. She was a petite, cute, and adorable thing, but she was also smoking hot. She had big breasts, a small waist, and killer legs. I'm serious, guys, I hate her now and I fear her. But I can still admit she was stunningly beautiful. She was an exchange student from Spain, so her accent was interesting to me as well. Without even thinking about it much, I ended up hitting on her. Her name was beautiful too, but I'll call her Angel in this post. We talked a lot, Angel and I. She was smart, interesting, and very flirty. I liked that. I was under a lot of stress because my girlfriend had no trust in me whatsoever. She thinks poorly of me no matter how hard I try, so whatever. And I went all the way in with what she thought of me. We ended up skipping the seminar to make out in the parking lot until they were closing. Then I drove her home. There, she said her roommate wasn't home and invited me to come in. We shared the most amazing night I've ever had. And after that, we shared many more nights and days together. She was writing a fantasy book and had a separate booklet of herbs with true samples taped over the pages. She gave them fake names and invented magical properties to each of them. She was inventing her own fictional world, plant by plant and animal by animal, before even starting to write the first chapter of the story. As I said before, she was really smart and never gave a step without being sure she was ready to do it. Aside from her talents and intelligence, she was also a huge nympho. After our first night together, she started sending me nudes and dirty messages between classes. She insisted that we had sex on campus a lot of times. We even filmed some of our encounters in the bathroom sitting in my car. And to be honest, I loved it. This was something that never bothered me about her. I adored it. This would end up backfiring me in the end. I broke up with my girlfriend about a week later, but I didn't tell her about Angel. And that's something I'd later regret as well. All I said to her is that I was done with her game of making me choose between her and one of my dreams. Up until this point, Angel seemed like the perfect girl to have a casual relationship with. She was pretty, smart, and fun. But one night at my place, she asked me something weird while we were doing it.
Would you be jealous if I looked at another guy?
I didn't answer, but she insisted almost immediately. "I asked you something," she said, while pushing me, forcing me to stop. I asked her why she was asking me something like this all of a sudden. She then explained, while we were at the mall, she saw me staring at another girl, and it was very disrespectful because I was with her. Now, I swear to everything that is sacred in this world, I have no idea what she was talking about. I don't recall staring at someone other than her, nor do I get why she'd get mad about it. She then proceeded to demand an apology, so I apologized, trying to avoid any conflict. It wasn't a huge deal after all. She then nodded, kissed me with satisfaction, and then we continued. This was the first of many weird moments. One time, I asked if she would be up to have a threesome, and she said that was a very bad idea because she had very physical feelings, and she was happy with just loving me and didn't want to love anyone else. This was incredibly sudden. We'd only known each other for like 3 weeks at the time. After that, she started introducing herself to my closest friends as my girlfriend, even though we weren't officially dating. When I told a friend about this, he said, "You're sleeping with her. Suck it up and give her this satisfaction." So I did. Even after a couple of weird things, she was still a very interesting person to spend time with, and she was still beautiful. But it was just the beginning. She started watching my every move. She knew where I was, even when I didn't tell her anything, because she followed every friend of mine on social media. Not just that, she started asking me, "Why'd you fade that slut's tweet?" And it totally freaked me out because nobody in the city knows I have a Twitter account. I didn't use my name or any personal information, but she followed me, and apparently with a fake account, because I set my profile to private, and she still knew about everything I tweeted, and even asked, "Are you trying to hide something, my love?" But I still maintained my relationship with her. I feel like a total idiot while telling you guys this. I feel ashamed to be so easy. Time went on, the semester ended, and I had to travel with my family to the other side of the country to the wedding of a cousin of mine. Of course, she went with me. My mother loved her because she was a good listener and would make a big deal out of every conversation. But my cousins, being of my age or closer, saw something weird in her almost immediately. She wasn't able to catch them in the same way she catched my mother. So, she eventually started trying to reduce the amount of time I spent with my family at the hotel or in the city. She would often take me to her room to have sex, while we were in the swimming pool, or just hanging out in someone else's place. Of course, I didn't notice this because, sex. And then, the wedding happened. Beautiful ceremony, amazing food, good drinks and all. But when the family photo took place and a cousin of mine insisted that no girlfriends and no boyfriends were allowed in the pictures, she got somehow angry at me. But even then, she was sort of calm. The real tragedy happened when the happy wife threw the bouquet and the groom threw the garter. She was really close to catching the bouquet, but she didn't, and when it was the turn for the guys to catch the garter, we all agreed to run away from it instead of trying to get it, as a joke. Eventually, we did try to catch the thing, but I didn't get it. When I came to our table, she said to me, "I can't believe you did this to humiliate me," and left. I ran after her, but she wouldn't stop until a few blocks later. She was crying a lot and said, "I did that because I didn't want to be with her, because I was still in love with my ex." I never mentioned my ex to her. This was the first time she ever mentioned it, but she certainly had her constantly present in her mind. She said she knew that she had called me, which she did a week before, but we didn't talk about getting back together or anything like that. And she wanted to go home. We were hours from home, 23 on road to be exact, but she insisted. She didn't want to see me or my family, so I took her to the airport and spent almost $400 getting her home, because I cared about her, and I didn't want her to travel alone on a bus. She told me to get back to the wedding, but I didn't. I stayed with her until she left, at 5:40 a.m. I got back to the hotel as the sun was rising up, and couldn't even sleep thinking about what the hell just happened. It took me that long to realize she wasn't fine. She had several problems, and that I had to break up with her. We didn't talk at all until I got back from my trip. She called me as soon as I got here, and she told me we needed to talk, and I agreed. She insisted we meet at her place. When I met her there, she apologized and told me I was her everything. She told me about her sick sister back in Spain, and how both of her parents were dead. She told me I was her true family, and that's when I dropped the bomb. I told her we needed to break up. She then started to kiss me and touch me, and, well, she broke me. We ended up having sex one last time. After we finished, I put on my clothes and told her she couldn't manipulate me like that anymore, that we were done, and that I wished her well. That night, I got a message from her. I wish you happiness, but you won't get it because I will destroy you. She was supposed to stay here a whole year, but she left the next semester. It didn't say anything about it to me. I thought she just wanted to let things go and start rebuilding her life somewhere else. 4 months passed, and in that time, I started to talk things out with my ex. Not Angel, the other one. And we started to slowly work out our problems. She admitted she was being unfair, and promised to control our jealousy. And we started dating again, stronger than ever. But as soon as we changed our status on Facebook, things fell apart. Angel sent my girlfriend several screenshots of our conversations of that week before I broke up with her. She proved to her that I cheated, with many texts, and even sent a video of a blowjob she gave in my car. Those conversations were dated a very long time ago, but she had backups of everything we had said and done in the past, prepared in case she had to destroy me. She also sent several videos of us having sex on campus from an anonymous email. I ended up getting expelled. I received a WhatsApp message 1 week later from a Spanish number. It said, "I told you so." So, I lost my girlfriend and my rights to study in the best university in my city, and several more. And I would like to say it was because of her, but ultimately, those were my own failures. Those were the victories I let her have. It turns out, she lives her life just like she was when she was building her fantasy world. Carefully and meticulously, making sure that she had control over every little detail around her. So, Angel, you might be the smartest person I've ever met. You might be the most gorgeous girl alive, and you might have fallen from the sky. But I don't want to ever meet you again. This happened when I was either 17 or 18. I was technically the creep in this situation, even though I never meant any harm. Before I begin the story, I need to point out that I have a few minor mental disabilities, so sometimes I can't read a situation for what it is, until it's too late. God knows, I have suffered for that multiple times in my life. Anyway, I used to work at a grocery store. It was rather large, so I had quite a few coworkers I barely knew. One day, I was working a rush when I saw a woman talking with one of my coworkers, who I'll call Mike. They seemed to know each other rather well, and I could have sworn I recognized her from one of the departments. So, I assumed she was a coworker on maternity leave. The reason I say maternity leave is because she was holding a baby boy, who looked like he was just a few weeks old. Anyway, the woman came to register to ring up her groceries when she was done talking to Mike. I greeted the woman with a smile and asked the typical questions like, "How are you?" Or, "Do you want this in a bag?" I looked again at the baby she was still cradling. I've always been good at taking care of kids, and have helped out at camps, daycares, and regular babysitting jobs countless times in the past. So, I asked the typical questions about her baby as well. Like, what's his name? And how old is he? When I finished ringing her up, I told her to have a good day, and that was that. I later found out from Mike that she wasn't a coworker at all. just a regular at the store. I figured that was okay. There were a lot of those, several of which I knew, and she seemed nice enough. I saw her shopping with her family quite often after that. And, like with every regular I knew, I always offered a smile and a wave when I saw them. One Saturday, I had finished my shift and was walking out of the door to my car when my mom called me and asked me to pick up some hot dogs. They were all the way in the back of the store, and I was at the front, but I rolled my eyes and began to walk back the way I had came. I cut through one of the aisles to get there faster, and I came across a group of 4 people taking up the entire aisle. I recognized them as the woman and her family. I didn't want to bother them, so I tried my best to walk around them, but they were going incredibly slow, and no matter what direction I tried to go, I couldn't get around them. Looking back, I probably should have just turned around and walked through a different aisle. But I got to the hot dogs before they even crossed my mind. The family resumed walking, and I got the hot dogs, paid for them, and left the store. I worked again the next day, and of course, the woman and her family came to the shop again. I smiled and waved like always and continued to work. About 20 minutes later, my manager asked me if he could talk to me. I didn't think much of it, thinking he just needed my help with cleaning the bathrooms or something. I followed him to the back room. When we got there, my supervisor was there too, and I instantly got confused and nervous. To make a long story short, they told me that the woman had reported me for stalking and trying to hurt her baby. I still remember feeling like I had been slapped in the face, as I knew instantly who they were talking about, even though I had never laid a hand on the woman or her baby. I explained my side of the situation, also making sure to mention the events of the day before, when I was shopping. Luckily, I had known both my manager and my supervisor ever since I started working at the store, so they believed me and chalked it up to the woman simply misreading the situation. The rest of the day, I felt like I was going to throw up. I'd come close to losing my job and had been accused of being a criminal, and I was technically still a kid. Even though I'd been assured by my manager and later my parents that I had done nothing wrong, I still spent a good few months after that constantly fearing that someone else with a baby would think of me that way, to the point where I couldn't even look at another child. I've since gotten over those feelings, but over the years, I've learned to be more careful with what I say or do. Luckily for the rest of the time I worked at the store, and never saw that woman or her family again. I'll make this short, and I hope I'm doing this right. This happened back in 2012. I was a recent transplant to Northern California, and I had recently lost my job and headed to the Bay Area. I decided while I was looking for a job in San Francisco, I'd stay in Motel 6 in East Oakland with my pitbull mix, Jeromeo. One night, I decided to walk about a quarter mile up the road to Jack in the Box with Jeromeo for a late night snack. On my way back, as I'm walking across the entrance to an abandoned hotel, a shitty Ford Focus cuts in front of me, cuts me off, and abruptly stops. I don't know if my explanation will do the next part justice, but I'll try. Out of the car hops an overweight lady dressed like a drag queen with shabby clothing. The threads were frayed, there were old stains on her shirt, and her hair was a mess. Before I could see her face, she started talking to me. It was almost like she was hiding her face. The words I could make out from her garbled sentences were date and baby. It sounded like she had a mouthful of marbles. I tried to ignore her and continued walking, but she cut me off again, with her body this time, and tried to touch my arm. When she reached for my arm, I got a glimpse of her face. This is when I got freaked out. She was a black lady, like Denzel's shade. Her face was riddled with what I thought looked like open sores and pockmarks. There was a sheen of liquid that covered her entire face that looked like a pus and blood mix. It had a greenish pink tint to it. I noticed this on the back of her hands too. You can imagine that I was thoroughly disgusted, and I instantly went into flight mode, sidestepped her hand, and dragged Jeromeo from her quickly. She protested with a mouthful of jibber jabber, but I kept moving quickly. I looked back to see our car pulling out and heading in the opposite direction. So, crackhead, prostitute, zombie lady. Let's not meet. Hello, brothers and sisters of the Night Army. Thank you for sticking around until the end. I really do appreciate it. Have you written any true scary stories or creepypastas that you want me to read? If so, you can email me at edgeofnightnarrations@gmail.com. Want to join the Night Army? Demolish that subscribe button. And if you want notifications, give that bell a good ring. If not, just keep in mind that I upload every weekend. I'm also on Discord and Twitter if you want to check me out there. Thanks again for watching, and remember,
monsters aren't the only thing that lurk in the dark.